Margaret sat in the lawyer's office, her hands folded in her lap. The chair was stiff. The room smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. Across from her sat Daniel, her husband of 23 years. He wouldn't look at her. The lawyer, a young woman with sharp glasses, shuffled documents. Mrs. Holloway, your husband is requesting full ownership of the marital home, citing that his income solely funded the purchase. Margaret blinked. She remembered signing the mortgage papers. She remembered painting every room. She remembered the garden she'd planted in the back. I worked, Margaret said quietly. I raised our children. I took care of his mother when she was sick. Daniel finally looked up. His face was blank. That's not the same as earning money, Margaret. The lawyer didn't flinch. She just wrote something down. Margaret felt something crack inside her chest. Not break. Just crack. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks, the lawyer said. Please bring all financial records from the past 5 years. Outside, the sun was too bright. Margaret stood on the sidewalk and realized she'd forgotten where she parked. Before we continue, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. She was 51 years old, and she felt invisible. The apartment was small. 1 bedroom. Margaret had moved in 3 months ago, after Daniel asked her to leave. Just until we sort things out, he'd said. She hadn't argued. She never argued. The walls were beige. The refrigerator hummed too loud. At night, she could hear her neighbor watching game shows through the thin wall. Margaret unpacked a box. Inside were photo albums. She opened one. There she was, 28 years old, holding baby Nathan. Her hair was darker then. Her smile was real. Another photo. The whole family at the beach. Nathan was 7. Sarah was 5. Daniel had his arm around Margaret's waist. She couldn't remember the last time he'd touched her like that. She closed the album, put it back in the box, pushed the box into the closet. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Mom, can you watch the kids Saturday? Josh has a work thing. Margaret typed back. Of course, sweetie. No, how are you doing, or are you okay? Just, can you watch the kids? Margaret set the phone down, looked around the empty apartment. When had she become someone people only called when they needed something? Saturday came. Margaret drove to Sarah's house, a beautiful colonial with a wraparound porch. Sarah and her husband Josh had bought it 2 years ago. Daniel had helped with the down payment. Margaret had offered to help too. Sarah had said, It's okay, Mom. Dad's got it covered. The front door was unlocked. Margaret let herself in. Grammy! 4-year-old Lucas ran down the hallway, his arms wide. Margaret caught him, lifted him up. He smelled like syrup and something sweet. Where's your sister? Margaret asked. Watching TV. Sarah appeared from the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear. She mouthed thank you to Margaret and grabbed her purse. Josh was already in the car, engine running. They were gone in 30 seconds. Margaret found Emma in the living room, 7 years old, glued to a tablet. Hi, Emma. Emma didn't look up. Hi. Margaret made lunch. Peanut butter sandwiches. Apple slices. Lucas ate with his fingers. Emma brought her tablet to the table. Honey, can you put that away while we eat? Emma sighed a long, dramatic exhale and set it down. Face down. Screen still glowing beneath. After lunch, Margaret took them to the park. She pushed Lucas on the swings. Emma sat on a bench, tablet back in her hands. An older woman sat down next to Margaret. Grandkids? Yes, Margaret said. You? 3. They live in Seattle. I see them twice a year if I'm lucky. The woman smiled, but it was sad. You're fortunate. Margaret watched Lucas laugh as the swing went higher. Was she? That night, Sarah came home at 9. Josh wasn't with her. Thanks, Mom. You're a lifesaver. Sarah handed Margaret $20. You don't have to pay me, Margaret said. Don't be silly. Sarah was already looking at her phone. Same time next Saturday? Margaret hesitated. Sarah, can we talk? Sarah glanced up. About what? About everything. The divorce. How you're feeling. How the kids are. Mom. Sarah's voice had an edge now. I don't want to get in the middle of it, okay? You and Dad need to figure it out. I'm not asking you to take sides. I just thought. I have a lot going on right now. Work is crazy. Josh is stressed. The kids are. Sarah trailed off. I can't handle your stuff too. Your stuff. Margaret felt her throat tighten. She nodded. Okay. She drove home in silence. At a red light, she looked at herself in the rearview mirror. When had she gotten so many lines around her eyes? Her phone rang. Nathan. Her son. Hey, Mom. Hi, sweetie. How are you? Good. Listen, I need a favor. Margaret waited. My lease is up next month, and I'm between jobs right now. I was wondering if I could borrow some money, just for first and last month's rent. I'll pay you back. How much? $3,000. Margaret thought about her savings account. The one Daniel didn't know about. The one she'd been adding to $20 at a time for 15 years. I'll see what I can do, she said. You're the best, Mom. Love you. The line went dead. Margaret sat at the green light until someone honked behind her. 2 weeks later, Margaret returned to the lawyer's office. She'd brought a folder, printed bank statements, tax returns, credit card bills. Daniel was already there. He'd brought someone else. This is Victoria, he said. Not to Margaret. To the lawyer. Victoria was younger. Maybe 35. Blonde hair, neat ponytail. She smiled at Margaret. Margaret didn't smile back. Victoria will be providing testimony regarding household finances, the lawyer said. Margaret stared at Daniel. Who is she? She works in my office, Daniel said. She's been helping me organize my records. She's been helping you? Yes. Margaret wanted to ask more. Wanted to ask when this started. Wanted to ask if this was why he'd asked her to leave. But she didn't. Because she already knew. The meeting lasted 40 minutes. Victoria had spreadsheets. Color-coded. Daniel's salary. His bonuses. His retirement contributions. Margaret had a folder of receipts. When it was over, Margaret walked to her car. Her hands were shaking. She sat in the driver's seat and stared at the steering wheel. 23 years. 2 children. His mother's bedside when she died. Every meal. Every birthday. Every parent-teacher conference. And now she was being erased. Line by line. Receipt by receipt. Margaret started the car. She didn't cry. She'd stopped crying weeks ago. That evening, Margaret called Nathan. It went to voicemail. She called Sarah. Same thing. She texted both. Can we have dinner this week? My treat. Nathan replied 3 hours later. Slammed with job interviews. Rain check. Sarah didn't reply at all. Margaret heated up soup from a can. Ate it at the small kitchen table. Washed the bowl. Dried it. Put it away. The apartment was so quiet. She sat on the couch and opened her laptop. Searched. What to do when your family forgets about you. The results were articles about dementia, Alzheimer's, memory loss. That wasn't what she meant. She closed the laptop. On the coffee table was a letter. It had arrived yesterday. Margaret had opened it, but hadn't read it carefully. She picked it up now. It was from her brother, Tom. He lived in Portland. They hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. Margaret, I heard about the divorce through Aunt Linda. I'm sorry. I know we haven't been close, but I want you to know I'm here if you need anything. Call me. At the bottom, he'd written his phone number. Margaret folded the letter. Put it back in the envelope. She wasn't ready to talk to anyone yet. But maybe soon. Margaret started walking in the mornings. Not for exercise. Just to move. To be somewhere that wasn't the apartment. There was a park near her building. A loop around a pond. Half a mile. She went every morning at 7. Same time. Same path. On the 4th day, an older man with a golden retriever nodded at her. Nice morning. Yes, Margaret said. On the 7th day, he said, I'm here every day. Haven't seen you before. I'm new, Margaret said. To the park or the neighborhood? Both. He smiled. Well, welcome. I'm Richard. This is Duke. Duke wagged his tail. Margaret reached down to pet him. I'm Margaret. They walked a few steps together. Then Richard turned onto a different path. See you tomorrow, he said. Margaret continued her loop. When she got back to the apartment, she felt lighter. Just a little. The next lawyer meeting was worse. Daniel's attorney presented a proposal. Margaret would receive 40% of their shared assets. Daniel would keep the house, the car, and his retirement account. What about my retirement? Margaret asked. You don't have one, the lawyer said. You weren't employed during the marriage. Margaret felt the room tilt. I raised 2 children. I took care of the home. Mrs. Holloway, the court recognizes non-financial contributions. But without documentation, it's difficult to assign monetary value. Documentation of what? Laundry? Grocery shopping? Driving my kids to soccer practice. The lawyer didn't answer. Daniel's attorney slid a paper across the table. If you agree to these terms, we can finalize everything within 60 days. Margaret looked at Daniel. Really looked at him. He was staring at his hands. No, Margaret said. Everyone looked up. No. Daniel's lawyer repeated. I'm not signing this. Mrs. Holloway, if this goes to trial, it could take months. It will cost you more in legal fees than you'd lose by settling now. Then it goes to trial. Margaret stood. Walked out. Her lawyer followed her into the hallway. Margaret, I need to be honest. You don't have much leverage here. If you fight this, you might end up with less. Then I'll end up with less, Margaret said. But I'm not disappearing. That night, Margaret called Tom. He answered on the second ring. Margaret, hi. I'm so glad you called. How are you? Margaret didn't answer right away. She wasn't sure how to. I don't know, she finally said. That's honest. They talked for an hour. Tom told her about his life in Portland, his job at a nonprofit, his 2 daughters, Margaret's nieces, who she barely knew. You should come visit, Tom said. Anytime. We have a guest room. Maybe, Margaret said. When they hung up, Margaret realized she was smiling. It had been a long time since she'd smiled. The trial was set for 6 weeks later. Margaret met with her lawyer twice a week. They built a case, not about money but about contribution, about value, about the invisible work that held a family together. It's not going to be easy, her lawyer said. But it's not impossible. Margaret also did something else. She wrote letters. To Nathan. To Sarah. Not angry letters. Just honest ones. She told them how she felt. Forgotten. Used. Like a convenience instead of a person. She told them she loved them. But that love needed to go both ways. She didn't mail the letters. She kept them in a drawer. But writing them helped. 3 weeks before the trial, Sarah called. Mom, can you watch the kids Saturday? Margaret took a breath. No. Silence. What? I can't. I have plans. What plans? That's not really the point, Sarah. Mom, I need you. Josh and I. Sarah, I've been there every Saturday for 3 months. I've called you. I've texted. I've tried to talk to you. And you've treated me like I only matter when you need something. More silence. I didn't, Sarah's voice cracked. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I know. But you did. Mom, I'm sorry. I've just been so overwhelmed, Anne. I've been overwhelmed too. I'm going through a divorce. I'm living alone for the first time in my life. And I needed you. But you weren't there. Sarah was crying now. What do you want me to do? I want you to see me. Not as Grammy. Not as the babysitter. As your mother. As a person. I do see you. Do you? Sarah didn't answer. Margaret felt her chest tighten. I love you, Sarah. But I can't keep being the only one who reaches out. Okay, Sarah whispered. Okay. I'll try. I'll do better. Thank you. They hung up. Margaret sat on the couch. Her hands were shaking again. But this time it felt different. This time it felt like strength. The courtroom was smaller than Margaret expected. She sat at a table with her lawyer. Daniel sat across the aisle with his. Victoria was not there. The judge was a woman in her 60s. She had gray hair pulled back in a bun and reading glasses perched on her nose. Let's begin, the judge said. Daniel's lawyer went first. He talked about income, assets, contributions. Mr. Holloway worked 60-hour weeks to provide for his family. He funded the home, the vehicles, the children's education. His financial contributions are clear and measurable. Margaret's lawyer stood. Your Honor, Mrs. Holloway's contributions were equally essential. She managed the household. She raised 2 children. She cared for her mother-in-law during her final illness. Without her labor, Mr. Holloway could not have worked those 60-hour weeks. The judge made notes. Mrs. Holloway, I'd like to hear from you. Margaret's heart pounded. She stood. Your Honor, I don't have spreadsheets. I don't have a salary. But I have 23 years of showing up. Every day. For my husband. For my children. I made sure everyone had what they needed. And I never asked for recognition. I just did it. Her voice wavered. But now I'm being told that didn't count. That because I didn't earn a paycheck, my work had no value. And that's not right. The judge nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Holloway. They broke for lunch. Margaret sat alone on a bench outside the courtroom. She wasn't hungry. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. I'm here. Margaret looked up. Sarah was walking down the hallway. Behind her was Nathan. Margaret stood. What are you doing here? We're here for you, Sarah said. Nathan hugged her. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have been here from the start. Margaret felt tears coming. She blinked them back. You didn't have to. Yes, we did, Sarah said. You're our mother. And we've been taking you for granted. They sat together on the bench. Sarah on one side. Nathan on the other. I'm scared, Margaret admitted. We know, Nathan said. But you're not alone. The afternoon session began. Margaret's lawyer called Sarah to the stand. Sarah took the oath. Sat down. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap. Miss Holloway, can you describe your mother's role in your family growing up? Sarah swallowed. She did everything. She made our lunches, helped with homework, drove us to practices and games. When I was in high school and got really sick, she slept in a chair next to my bed for 3 nights. And your father? He worked. A lot. He was there, but not really present. Not like Mom. Thank you. Daniel's lawyer stood. Miss Holloway, your father provided financially for the family, correct? Yes. Would you say his income allowed you to have a comfortable childhood? Sarah paused. Yes. But money isn't the same as showing up. The lawyer frowned. No further questions. Nathan was called next. He was nervous. Margaret could tell. He kept shifting in his seat. Mr. Holloway, can you speak to your mother's contributions to the family? She held everything together, Nathan said. When Dad worked late, she was there. When I failed a math test, she helped me study. When Grandma was dying, Mom took care of her every day for 6 months. Dad visited once a week. And after your grandmother passed? Nathan's jaw tightened. Dad went back to work. Mom, I don't think she ever really recovered. She was exhausted. But she never complained. Margaret felt her throat close. The lawyer continued. In recent months, have you maintained regular contact with your mother? Nathan looked down. No. Why not? I was focused on my own problems. I didn't think about what she was going through. And now I realize I should have. She's always been there for me. And I wasn't there for her when she needed me. After Nathan stepped down, the judge called a recess. Margaret walked outside. She needed air. Sarah followed her. Mom, are you okay? I don't know, Margaret said. I didn't expect you to say those things. I meant them. I know. That's what scares me. What do you mean? Margaret turned to face her daughter. For years, I thought I was doing the right thing. Being strong. Not complaining. Just handling it. But maybe I should have said something. Maybe I should have asked for help. You shouldn't have had to ask, Sarah said. We should have noticed. They stood in silence. Finally, Sarah spoke. I'm sorry, Mom. For everything. Margaret pulled her close. I'm sorry, too. The trial resumed. Daniel took the stand. His lawyer asked him about his work, his income, his financial planning. Then Margaret's lawyer stood. Mr. Holloway, you stated that you worked 60 hours a week. Is that correct? Yes. And during those years, who took care of your children? Margaret. Who managed the household? Margaret. Who cared for your mother during her final illness? Daniel hesitated. Margaret. And when you asked your wife to leave the family home 3 months ago, Had she done something wrong? No. Had she been unfaithful? No. Had she neglected her responsibilities? No. Then why did you ask her to leave? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he said, because I wanted something different. Different how? I don't know. I felt like I'd spent my whole life working, providing, and I wanted to see what else was out there. So you asked your wife, who had spent her whole life caring for you and your children, to leave. Daniel didn't answer. Mr. Holloway, do you believe your wife's contributions to your marriage had value? Yes. Do you believe those contributions should be recognized in this divorce settlement? Daniel looked at Margaret. For the first time in months, really looked at her. Yes, he said quietly. The judge took 20 minutes to deliberate. When she returned, the courtroom was silent. I've reviewed the evidence and testimony, the judge said. This case is not simply about dividing assets. It's about recognizing contribution in all its forms. She looked at Daniel. Mr. Holloway, you provided financially for your family. That is valuable and important. Then she looked at Margaret. Mrs. Holloway, you provided care, labor, and emotional support. That is equally valuable and important. The judge outlined her decision. Margaret would receive 50% of all marital assets, including equity in the home. She would also receive a portion of Daniel's retirement account and monthly spousal support for 10 years. Marriage is a partnership, the judge said. And when that partnership ends, both parties should leave with dignity and fairness. Margaret felt something unfold in her chest. Not happiness. Not relief. Justice. 3 months later, Margaret signed the papers. She bought a small house, 2 bedrooms, a yard, room for a garden. She planted roses. And tomatoes. And herbs she couldn't name but liked the smell of. Nathan visited once a month. They had dinner. They talked. Sarah came by every other week. Sometimes with the kids. Sometimes alone. One Saturday, Sarah showed up with coffee and pastries. They sat on Margaret's new porch. I've been thinking, Sarah said, about what you said. About being seen. Yeah. I want you to know that I see you now. Not just as my mom, but as Margaret. As someone who has her own life and feelings and needs. Margaret's eyes stung. Thank you. And I'm sorry it took so long. You're here now. That's what matters. Margaret still walked at the park every morning. Richard and Duke were always there. One day, Richard asked, "How are you doing?" "Really?" Margaret thought about it. "Better. I'm doing better." "Good." They walked the loop together. Duke trotted ahead, sniffing everything. "Do you ever feel invisible?" Margaret asked. Richard smiled. "Every day. That's what happens when you get older. People stop seeing you. They see what they need from you. But not you. So what do? You start seeing yourself," Richard said. "That's the only way through." Margaret nodded. She understood. 6 months after the trial, Margaret received a letter. It was from Tom. He was coming to visit. She hadn't seen him in 3 years. When he arrived, they hugged for a long time. "You look good," Tom said. "Lighter somehow." "I feel lighter." They spent the weekend together. Tom met Nathan and Sarah. He played with the grandkids. On Sunday, they sat in Margaret's backyard. The roses were blooming. "I'm proud of you," Tom said. "For what?" "For standing up for yourself. For not disappearing." Margaret looked at her hands. "I almost did." "But you didn't." "No," she said. "I didn't." 1 year after the divorce was finalized, Margaret received an email. It was from Daniel. "Margaret, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but I need to say something. I'm sorry. For all of it. For not seeing you. For not valuing what you gave. For making you feel invisible. I was wrong. I hope you're doing well." Margaret read it twice. Then she closed her laptop. She didn't reply. Not because she was angry, but because she didn't need to. His apology didn't change what happened. It didn't give her back the years she'd lost. But it confirmed something she'd learned. She had been right to fight. Right to stand up. Right to refuse to disappear. That evening, Margaret sat on her porch. The sun was setting. The air smelled like roses and freshly cut grass. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Dinner tomorrow? My place." Just us. Margaret smiled. Typed back. I'd love that. She set the phone down. Looked at the sky. For the first time in years, she felt like herself again. Not someone's wife. Not someone's mother. Just Margaret. And that was enough. Margaret's story wasn't about winning. It was about being seen. She didn't get everything she wanted. But she got something more important. Her dignity. Her voice. Her worth. And in the end, maybe that's what justice really is. Not revenge. Not victory. But the simple, quiet truth. You mattered. You always did. What would you have done in Margaret's place? Would you have fought, or would you have signed the papers and walked away? Was her silence before the trial a form of strength? Or did waiting too long cost her more than it should have? Let me know what you think. The end.